Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first edition of a series about influencer marketing organized by Africa Digital Leadership. And we're going to be back right after the break. All right, and we're back. And so today we're here to talk about influencer marketing. You know, back in the days, the people that were influencers were people that had either an incredible skill or they were a celebrity, but today just about anybody can be an influencer, and because of this, there are so many questions in the field of influencer marketing. But in this particular session, we will try to focus on answering questions about influencer rates, because this question has become really, really relevant today because people are asking themselves all kinds of questions, and recently there've been a couple of talks and some topics trending online related to influencer marketing rates. So welcome everybody, and my name is Bitti, and I'm going to be your moderator today. I'd like to introduce you to our panelists. We are so fortunate to have an incredible list of panelists that are joining us today, and I can only imagine how insightful the conversations will be, right? So the first person, I'm going to start with ladies. The first person that I'd like to talk about is Caroline Kendi. Caroline Kendi is a seasoned marketer. She has experience in brand marketing and digital, something very rare. She currently heads brand and marketing communications at Safaricom, but before that, she's had the opportunity to work with blue chip companies across the continent. Really, so some continental experience there. Second lady on the panel will be the voice of influencers today. So her name is the one and only Joy Kendi, so Joy is a renowned content creator. She's been doing this for a while, and her content has been featured internationally, locally, and she keeps on growing and she keeps on being influential. So we felt that it was important to bring someone that has been there since almost the beginning, in Kenya, when people really started paying influencers. And so we're looking forward to that. The third panelist is Mr. Moses Kemi Barrow, a digital guru. So let me tell you a little story. I met Moses when I arrived here in Nairobi about 10 years ago. He was really one of the first guys to really start digital. So he's been there from the beginning up to now. He's what you call a true expert. And you might know him through his blog because he's Kenya's best tech blogger. You can quote me on that. And probably one of the best in Africa as well. So I seriously can't wait to actually engage with him as well. The last person I'd like to talk about is Nelson Aseka. A lot of you guys might have known him, in his previous life. He was working, with some consumer brands. He's been responsible for, I will not necessarily name them here. He was really responsible for building influence for these brands. And he left that and decided to go and build a platform, an influencer platform, that allows companies and individuals to manage influencers. So this is basically why we felt it was very, very important for us to have him on board as well. Welcome, everybody, and we're really happy to have you here.
Thank you for having us.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. So we'll dive right in and with the first question. So the way this is going to work is we're going to have initially a set of general questions, then we're going to dive into influencer rates. And then after that, we'll go into what we call possibly some ideas when it comes to some possible framework when it comes to influencer rates. So let's start with the first question, which is in the general section. We would like to know what steps a brand should take when choosing an influencer. Is there some sort of method to this, or is it just something that you do, because, you wake up in the morning, you look at some influencers online, you look at the numbers, and you actually just pick them? I would like Caroline Kendi to answer.
Awesome, thanks. I think that's a really good question, because I think when I think of influencers, and as you introduced, I've been in the industry, Moses and I have been in the industry for years now. And I think influencing has always happened. Yeah. And that's why they say the most powerful marketing is word of mouth marketing, because influencers have been there since the beginning of time. Yeah. Because of the role that they play. I think what has happened now with the social media and digital platforms, we have access to a lot more influencers, and we have access to a lot more ways that people can actually can influence, or at least even create content. So when I think through what is it that you must do or think through when you're selecting an influencer as a brand, I think the first thing is to understand that of why you're doing it. Yeah, what's your business objective? Why are you? What do you want to do? What do you want to get out of it as from objectives, your business objectives? Once you're clear about that, the second thing is then you're clear about what is it that you stand for as a brand. So what are your brand values? Because you have to understand. I see in brands as people. So it's the same way I'm a person and I want to a friend or somebody else to speak on my behalf. So the most important thing is for you to understand first yourself. What are your values? What's your purpose? What's your personality? And then if you're going out to choose a friend who's going to speak on your behalf, which is now your influencer, that person should share the same values. They should share the same, they should actually have something in common, because then that's what brings credibility to what you're saying. So for me, first step is understanding what you're trying to do in your business objective and who you are as a brand. Then secondly, with that understanding, then you look out and say, okay, fine, now, who are the people who can credibly, so credibility is a big deal. They must credibly be able to pass this message on my behalf. They need to be authentic. Can they do it authentically, speaking their mind as themselves? Are they what I call aspirational? Is there something that they will get people to look up to? Because at the end of the day, that's a core part of what marketing is. Are they people who are accessible? Yeah, the target audience that I'm trying to reach, are they able to reach them and able to get the numbers that I need? And then last but not least, are they able to engage the audience? Yeah, are you able to see what the response is? Am I able to see, based on, again, if I want you to change your perception about my brand, or I want you to buy something or whatever, am I able to see that return on that investment? So I think for me, those are the two things that I would say are important.
All right, thank you very much, Candy. It makes a lot of sense. I'd like to hear from Mr. Moses Kimibaro. What do you think? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think when choosing an influencer, I think one of the most important things, obviously, like Candy has mentioned, is we need to think about the brand affinity, right? Just like you said, it's a brand is like a person, and you want to find an influencer who aligns to your brand first and foremost. Secondly, what's the campaign objective? Is it to drive sales? Is it to create more brand awareness or engagement regarding a specific campaign that you may be running? So you might find that depending on the campaign objective, you might use different influencers. And then lastly, what is the target or objective? What are you trying to achieve? Is it purely on sales? Is it maybe around other metrics that you're looking at? And I think when you look at those variables, then you can kind of see, and identify which influencer is going to be the right fit for a specific campaign, or maybe it's a long-term brand engagement as an ambassador. So really thinking about those variables and determining, who's the right influencer. And of course, I think ultimately the influencer needs to be sold on your brand. They need to believe in what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because I think that authenticity comes. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Moses. Let's move to something a little bit more engaging, actually. So it's all well and good. You choose an influencer. What should you do to choose an influencer? So let's say you have a campaign. You've actually gotten an influencer. Now, usually there's a bit of a challenge. Brands have some big egos. They don't want to listen to what the influencer tells them, and sometimes or vice versa. The influencer says, "I know my audience," and the brand says, "I know my brand." So what do you guys think? So whose role, so how does this really work? And usually when you go, let's say you go to Instagram or so on, it says paid partnership. So it's a partnership, but in a lot of instances, we seem to have a bit of friction. So I would like to hear from Joy Candy. I don't know if you've had this experience. What do you think of that?
I have had issues in the past with I call them clients, where they kind of want to basically take over the entire campaign. But for me, my biggest thing is I always try to explain that I am the content creator and I am the influencer. I know my audience a lot more than they know my specific audience, because of course, as a brand, you already know who you're trying to speak to. And I completely understand that. But also I know how to speak to my people in a way where they understand what it is that I'm trying to say a lot better than them. So usually in such situations, my biggest thing is just to try to communicate that to the brand or the client. But also at the end of the day, I'm being paid by the brand. So you still have to meet them like in the middle. So it's kind of the same thing as like if you own a store or whatever, client is always right. So I always just try to meet them in the middle. But then I also have to say that given from my experience, I've not dealt with that as much. Most agencies or most brands that I've worked with have a very clear understanding on what content creation is, and kind of just give you the breakdown of like, these are the points that we really need to hit in this campaign, but however you do it, it's cool.
All right, thank you very much, Joy. I would like to hear the client side, the brand side. So Candy, what do you think of this? What do you think of this?
Yeah, no, I think for me, the biggest thing is about understanding what you're trying to do and what the outcome is, what the desired outcome is. If you're on the same page with regards to the outcome, then the how, I think, is very much a partnership, as Joy Kendi has said, in the sense that, I mean, the reason why, if I've selected you as an influencer, there's something I've already seen, right? And I know there's an authenticity you must keep. But then so it's more about how can I ensure that whatever in the way that you deliver will still come back and deliver for me the outcome. And I think the power of the digital space right now is also the flexibility. You can try something today, see how it works. If it doesn't work, change it. You do it tomorrow. So also, I think the beauty of the world we live in now is you can try something, and as a brand person, maybe I'm comfortable, but then I'll be like, okay, fine, let's give it a week. Based on the outcome we're trying to achieve, if in a week we still haven't delivered, then we say, okay, let's try something different. And it's very much a partnership because also brand people understand their consumer and their target audience. Yeah. So it's about the target audience from different perspectives. So my thinking is I don't think there's anyone who owns it per se. It's about how do you partner together to deliver the outcome. Yeah, that's the most important thing. And as long as you're doing that, then the friction is actually non-existent.
Right. Thank you very much, Candy. So usually, you have the brand and then you have the influencer and then you have the agency in the middle. So I'd like to hear from Moses Kimibaro. So what do you make of this? What is the sweet spot? How should this really work?
In the perfect scenario, I think we would say that from we come across as a sort of a trusted advisor. So, we work with influencers, we're practitioners, we're people who are in the marketplace, engaging with influencers regularly, and also at the same time working with brands. So I think when you take on the role of really the trusted advisor, it's really, again, looking at the best interests of what the brand is looking for, and then looking again on the other side to see, which influencers or which influencer platform to use to achieve the results. But more importantly, making sure there's this alignment between the campaign objective and also making sure that we find the right fit and the right pricing, and of course, establish the right measurement metrics to understand what's working and not working. Because at the end of the day, I think it's always going to be a question of what value does this engagement bring. Sometimes it's a sales objective, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's more around, as a brand being seen and heard by a constituency that maybe they're having a struggle to engage. So I think, again, the role really of the agency is that we see ourselves almost as a trusted advisor between, both the influencer collective and the client and the brand, and then making sure that we have a win-win scenario happening there.
All right, thank you so much. All right, guys, concludes the first part of our talk, and we're going to take a 1-minute break and come back and try to shift gears. All right, guys, and we are back. So please remember, so wherever you're watching this, you're accessing this broadcast from, please send us your questions. So what we're going to do is we have about an hour to talk to these panelists, and we would like you to send your questions progressively, instead of sending them at the end, because after the hour, we'll stop receiving questions and then we'll answer the questions that we've actually received. So please just send your questions progressively. We have a team that is there behind looking at the questions, and then we should be well organized and ready to assist your answer your question. So I'd like to shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about value now. And I would like us to really look at what brands do, how the brands really assess the value provided by influencers. Are there metrics? I mean, how does that work? And since we have a brand present here, we're going to go and talk to Kendi. What do you think of this?
Value for brands.
Yes.
Sorry, I missed that.
Yes, basically, and the question will appear also on screen. So it's basically, how do you systematically assess the value provided
by influencers? Yeah. So I think for me, it's very simple when you say it's a business. At the end of the day, there's a business objective that you're trying to achieve, and the business objective, I say businesses and brands exist for one thing: to deliver value for their shareholders. Okay. So once you think about it like that, you have to say, okay, so based on my business objective, now how is this influencer going to deliver that value, either short term or long term? So a good example is if I say I sell mandazis, my revenue for mandazis is 10,000 bob. My costs are 5K. So what I'm left with is 5K. If the influencer is gonna cost me 5K and not help me get to a higher revenue of 20K, for example, then that influencer is not generating for me any value. Yeah, both short term and long term. So I think I really like to look at it from a practical sense, in the sense that you have to have an influencer who's generating both financial value, so it has to add value to your P&L, and then sometimes, depending on what your objective is for the campaign, it's maybe just to get your name out there for awareness, yeah. Because at the end of the day, many people need to know about my Mandazi business. So again, defining to say based on how many people call me back. If every day I get 5 callbacks without the influencer, if I engage this influencer and all of a sudden 50 people are calling me on inquiries, then that's also how you can assess value. So right. I really want to stress the fact that you have to understand what you're trying to deliver as a brand and as a business, and then see how the influencer is an enabler as part of your marketing strategy to get you to grow.
All right. Thank you very much, Kendi, for this. I'd like to bring in Nelson. You work with platforms, you work with brands. So what do you make of this? How do you assess the value of an influencer provided by an influencer?
All right. So, influencer marketing is one of the fastest, actually is the fastest growing and one of the most impactful channels out there. And that's realized by marketers across the board. But the one major pain point that they have today is that they cannot determine the ROI of influencer marketing campaigns. And that's where we come in, because we have the ways, we have the machinery and technology to be able to calculate influence. So basically ours is a very simple formula, which is influence is equals to the audience reach, brand affinity, and the relationship with the audience. So that when you get that to a T, you actually will be able to measure the results of what you bring to the table in terms of campaigns.
All right, thank you very much. So now let's get into the meat of what it is that we're here to do today. So do you feel, in your view, do you think the current rates are fair to influencers in Kenya? And how can one really justify the rates? Is it years of experience? Is it reach? Is it exclusivity? Is it engagement? I mean, what is it? Is it the proof that you can actually convert? So what is it? And I'd like to talk to Joy, voice of the influencers here today.
Okay, so it's kind of hard to determine whether or not the influencer rates are actually fair in Kenya because we don't have a standard. For example, in the US, there's so many different what you call them, like websites where, like for example, Influential and things like that, where people can put in their information and tells you statistically how much you should actually charge, and that rate kind of goes to everybody. Versus in Kenya, we don't really have that, so everybody kind of just says whatever rate they kind of feel like. But for me, and also a few of my friends, when we come up with a rate, it's more of a mathematical. There's a math behind the actual rate. So when it comes to that, it is fair. And the rate that you actually come up with looks at your engagement, it looks at your actual following, and kind of takes into consideration even day by day, because each day also the engagement changes, like it fluctuates all the time. So I personally think like my rates are fair because there's a math behind it. So what was the other question?
No, so basically it's really that, is it, so what is the metric, you know, that should be really used, you know what I mean, for them to justify that. And
Okay.
and you see at the same time as well, yeah, so please just go ahead, just answer this before I let you don't lose your
Math. So I think I can use, for example, Kendall Jenner as a perfect example for this, because it came out that she charges around $500,000 to $600,000 per IG. So she has around 136 million followers. So in the US, usually the way they do their math is they take your following and then they times it by 0.010 to 0.0004, if that makes any sense. So, for example, for her, I kind of did the math. So she must be doing around 0.005. So it's like you're charging 0.005 cents per follower. So that's why she's able to come up with her charge of around $600,000 for IG post. Versus in Kenya, it's kind of the same thing. So I've heard certain followers kind of go anywhere between 0.02 to 0.05 per follower. And then that's how you come up with your rate.
All right. Just Joy, still talking to you. But isn't there something a little bit intangible as well? You know, because you know you're talking about math. You know, that's cool, but why? There are so many different factors. You know, it's not. You can't. Or I don't know. You know, is it all math? So there's nothing really intangible about this.
Breaking up.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, and I can hear you.
Yeah, so I'm saying, so isn't there anything intangible about this? I mean, is it all math? You know, number of followers, we divide, we have a formula, and I mean, there are people with some swag. I mean, that amazing. That can be amazing. So, yeah, what do you think of this? I'm serious.
There's certain things that also change the actual mathematics or the math or this the number that you actually come up with. So one, you also need to look at cost of production. So, for example, for me as a content creator, my amount might actually go slightly higher up just because of things like locations, equipment, editing time, things like that. So, for example, Kendall Jenner will charge however much she's doing because she's doing a selfie with the item, that's how much it is. Versus other influencers will charge more because there's actual production put behind it. Now, you also have to remember that when it comes to that, there is things like engagement and, for example, the amount of followers that you have, it's kind of morbid, but no matter how many followers you have, some people might have died on Instagram. So that's like a few extra people that you're not gonna technically include, or you can't really include as a follower. Or it kind of honestly just changes. But then that's why also a lot of us tend to have monthly rates. So for example, if we have a short-term engagement, we'll charge a certain amount of money per post because we're only doing 1 or 2 posts. Versus if we do a month-long to like even 6-month, a year-long contract, we'll actually subsidize that by like a lot to actually make sense for the client and actually give them exactly what it is that they need. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. I see. I actually have another question, but I think I'm going to leave it for keep it for a bit later because you know we're going to go into something else. So and this is, and I think you've actually really addressed the next question. It was really about what are the best practices, and I'd like to hear from Moses Kemibaro. What do you think the best practices should be, when it comes to assessing an influencer value, you know what I mean? So really, and rates, coming up. Let me rephrase it. How should an influencer, say I'm a young influencer, right? So how should I really assess my true value and therefore translate that into my rates? So any key points?
You're on mute.
You're muted. Yes, yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. We back.
Okay, sorry
No
about that. So I think there's several factors here, right? So one of them would be how many followers or how many followers do you have as an influencer? Do you actually have, are you a small influencer, meaning you're under 10,000? Are you between 10 to 50,000, or are you 50,000 plus? And I think those are the nano, micro, and sort of macro influencers. So where do you sit in that space? Number two, how engaged are your influencers, right? So when you post something, are you having a tiny fraction of them engaging and commenting and so forth with your content, or are you having a significant number of them? And then I think there's a question also of track record, right? If I was able to, say, introduce a trackable link in the content you're publishing, and then I'm able to then see how many conversions or engagements are directly attributable to whatever you put on social media, what sort of numbers are we seeing? So I think track record in terms of, are you able to provide verifiable evidence that when you do a campaign, that the numbers are good and there's a performance there that we can actually measure. So I think when somebody's thinking about a rate card, it's thinking about all those different variables, whether it's the number of followers, the ability to demonstrate historical performance, and then also from a customer perspective, what have you delivered to them as a brand in terms of tangible results. And then I think all those things somewhat translate into the rate card that you're going to have. It's not always about the pure number of followers. It's also about how much influence you exert within the communities that are actually engaging with your content.
Thank you very much, Moses. Actually, this leads me to the next question, where I would like to hear from all the panelists. There's something that happened a few weeks ago. There's a young lady by the name of Aziad. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it the right way. She released this, her rate card, and she said, listen, guys, I don't know what you guys think, but this is what I'm worth. You guys can say whatever you want. If you want to engage, to work with me, this is what you'll have to pay me. And it created a lot of turmoil, and some people were a little bit upset. I'll keep it on screen so that you guys get to see that. A couple of people started reacting, no, it's too much. It's who does she think she is? Or some people said, no, it's actually right. Brands have been actually using influencers as cheap publicity, So because, they realize that when they go to Facebook or Google, it costs them more. So when it comes to coming to influencers, they don't want to pay influencers. So they are really, opinions are really divided. So I'd like to hear Nelson's thoughts on that. I'd like to start with Nelson, considering you have a platform, and you're helping brands and people, establish these things. So what do you think of that?
I think I have a radical approach to that, because I believe that influence is not a profession, right? And therefore, brands should change the perception from which influencer should I work with to how can I influence, that should be the question. And on the other hand, we also have creators. Creators is actually a profession where they have specialized in a skill, in an art, and that needs to have its own rates. But with influencers, these are people who actually should be doing it as a hobby. It's like brands need to look for people like what Caroline Kendi said earlier about looking for people who have like an affinity to the brand and are credible. And that makes it sort of just leveraging of, this love for the brand to use it as a credible mouthpiece to the following, to the audience, to be able to transmit something. But yeah, so coming to those rates, I think, our platform is able to run the analysis with, advanced algorithm to be able to see exactly who the audience that a particular influencer has. And just out of curiosity, we ran an analysis on, as yet, but I'm not going to say the results though. So it looked quite off, trying to, we couldn't put the figures and, really justify them based on the results we are getting on the background. So, yeah, and that still brings me back to my thing about influencer. Influence is not a profession.
All right, thank you. Ouch! This is really, it's really painful. Huh? There are some people that really think this is a profession. But anyway, so I'd like to hear from Joy Candy. Joy, what do you think? You're a fellow influencer. You happen to be both. You're a content creator, you're an influencer. So what do you make of her rates? Do you think it's it's justified? They're justified, or what do you say?
Okay, so I just realized also before when I was talking about the rates that I said the wrong thing. So in Kenya, people actually do 0.2 to 0.5 per influencer. Per following, and then you times your following. So according to that math, I think her rates are very legit. And the way I had mentioned earlier that when you do long-term engagements, you actually subsidize. So a lot of people are really focusing on like the top half of a rate where it's 100K per IG story, per IG post, right? Mm-hmm. But then they're not looking at the actual subsidized rate where a lot of creators and influencers will actually find a way to give you bang for your buck, where they kind of subsidize the rates a lot, so so we can actually be able to have a long-term engagement with the person. And according to her following, she has like 600,000 followers. Like, to me, that is it's math.
Okay, well, no, thank you very much, Joy. Nelson, she has to defend
my people.
No, the thing is,
I'd like to hear from Kendi. What do you think? What do you think of that?
So I think for me, first, I really like the thinking around it's math, and you have to be logical in how you position your brand. So now here I'm saying the brand here we're talking about is the influencer, right? So they are also a brand, and they need to create brand value for themselves. But there's a method to the madness. And the method to the madness has to always start from who is your customer, and here your customer is a person who's going to be paying you for whatever content you're creating. So for me, it's two things. One, understand what are they trying to do, and how are you able to get them. Like I like the example of Kylie Jenner. At the end of the day, if I'm a brand that is new, that I want 1 million people tomorrow to know about my brand. Right, awareness. I just want to be in their faces. I will not, out of my total marketing budget, I will just go and give her my entire budget, because I know when I do that, she'll be able to deliver for me that awareness and therefore the conversion that I need. So the first thing is that I think for me, I would say as an influencer, you need to understand who are you targeting with this rate card. Secondly, is you need to have some flexibility in your rate card, in the sense that you need to, depending on what you're doing. So we usually say there are 3 C's when it comes to influencing. There's the commenter. So are you just commenting, putting up a post, right? Are you creating something, which is I think what Kendi was saying? Are you going to spend a little bit of time and money to create a GIF, to create photography, whatever? Or are you even going to co-create with me and then me here as a brand? Are we going to co-create together, to collaborate, to develop some content? Obviously, the engagement there with regards to the time that you've used and the energy that you've used is different. So you also need to have that kind of flexibility, because at the end of the day, that is how now you're selling different purposes, different products or SKUs to me as a person who's buying, to say, look, if you want my time the whole day, my rate is 10,000 per hour. Therefore, it's going to take X amount of money. So I think there is a method to the madness, but you have to understand you have to understand the difference in what you're doing, and you have to really understand who you're targeting and then the value that you add. So you have 6,000 followers. If I pay you 100K, and after that I don't see any impact on my side, then the likelihood that I will come back is very low. Yeah. So also you need to have a rate card and a pricing strategy in this case, which is sustainable, that will demonstrate the value, that will keep me coming back. And then me as a brand person, if it works for me, I'll go and tell everyone, by the way, you need to use this person because they really deliver for you value. So you kind of have to look at it from that perspective, in my view.
All right. Thank you very much, Candy. Guys, this is from the person that is driving brand and marketing communication at Safaricom. So guys, please listen, get your act together. I would like to hear from Moses. We actually had, before the show, he said some things, and I really would like you to say the same thing now. So what do you think, Moses? What do you think of this? And guys, let's try to be candid, because the whole point of this is to really speak freely.
So I think when it comes down to it, whether you're a brand or an organization or individual and you want to work with an influencer, you want to get value, okay? Whether that value is sales, whether it's the opportunity to build brand love and awareness, whether it's to penetrate new markets that you didn't have before, you want some kind of value. So when these rate cards are created, I think the big question is, this is rate card rooted in a valuable proposition that is actually going to work. And I think Kelly said something very profound in the sense that she will not work with an influencer if they don't deliver the expected value, right? That's a fundamental thesis of what this is. So for me, I would say that having seen Aziad's rate card, I was actually taken aback, because I was almost like, she's just come on the scene. She's fairly new. I think she's still establishing credentials. She had a very viral moment. Let's not take that away from her. But ultimately, she will be measured by the value she creates for her clients. And I think from that perspective, there's a lot of rate cards that I've come across where they're not rooted in reality. I think it's all about sentiment, what you believe you're actually worth. Whereas if you put it to the test, the question will be at the end of the campaign or the end of the engagement, whether or not you delivered value. And I think that's really where the conversation really lies around what should the rate card be versus what the influencer thinks they're actually worth. There's also a scenario where the influencers who are undercosting or underpricing themselves and therefore potentially not reaping the true value of what they bring to the marketplace. But I'd say that on the top of the market, where you have the macro influencers, the really big names, it's very much overpriced. And then on the lower end, where you have the nanos and the micros, because they don't have leverage yet, many of them traditionally have been underpricing their rates.
All right, thank you. And Joy, I saw you nodding, when you said that some people are underpriced. So do you want to add something?
Yeah, I think, okay, so first of all, I think it's when Caroline Kendi, when she said being flexible with your rate is really important. Somebody needs to be able, because also different brands have different budgets. A budget is a budget, so you have to just be willing to, like my first thing is always, if somebody tells me what their budget is, if it is a brand that I do genuinely love and I have worked with them in the past, or like if it's product that I do genuinely use, I will tell them it's not exactly like what I would ask for, but this is what I can do for you with that rate. And I've seen that usually tends to work a lot better versus always saying, no, it's 100K. We're not doing anything to it. Now, when it comes to the influencers who under ask, I think it's a huge problem in Kenya just because we don't have a structure yet that says this is how much an influencer should charge from a certain amount going up. So because of that, a lot of people kind of have that desperateness. And I used to be like, I'm not even gonna lie, like especially in the beginning, when we first started off as influencers, was content creators. At the time, it was like me, Sharon, and Nancy White. Nancy was always like the first thing ever. So when we first started off, there was no such thing as even influencers. So I was like, in the beginning, I was very desperate where I'd take any risk anybody was willing. But then when I started to actually have a full understanding of like the back end of what it is that I do, like how many clicks I can actually bring into a company, people actually purchasing, I started realizing that we actually do have a power behind us. So I think there are a lot of influencers who under ask a lot, but also just because they want to just get that first job. And I completely understand, I get that I like to do that.
All right. Can you guys hear me? I had the impression that I lost some people here. You can all hear me?
Yeah.
All right. So guys, so there's something really, thank you very much, Ken, Joy, for this. There's something that is going to, this question might make some people a bit uncomfortable. But anyway, you know, I mean, let's just have it. So we all know Edgar Obari, right? I mean, he became really famous and he spends his time, you know, just creating some gossip, you know, and a lot of people, even though people deny, you know, that they watch and that they read what it is that he publishes, I know a lot of people do. And therefore, he has a lot of traffic, he has a lot of traction, right? So Edgar realized that, you know, and that's what he said, apparently, that his feed is not necessarily always busy. So on the days when they're not very busy, he might as well just use his platform to make a bit of money and also to help small businesses that cannot afford top dollar, you know, to go and hire those big influencers and so on. So what he decided to do is to charge 1,000 per Insta story, and then he publishes maybe 100 Insta stories. You know, so this kind of changes the game, you know, a little bit. And we've seen that a lot of influencers, you know, are following the trend. I saw Rono saying that she's charging 3,000. If you hold on, I know this can get me in trouble, but you know, you remember this also happened, you know. I'll give you a second to read, you know. It was a bit of a controversial thing, but we're not going to get into the controversy. But Kamine as well, you know, has decided that she's also charging about 1,000 for this. So what do you guys think? Honestly, do you think this is a viable model? You know, do you think this is even ethical? I mean, what do you guys think? Again, I would like to talk to Joy Kendi, you know, because you're the influencer here. So, I mean, what do you make of this?
So money is very simple. I think that a lot of people, let's just start with the side for the SMEs. A lot of small businesses don't have the opportunity or don't even have the funds to be able to hire, influencers or content creators with large numbers. So I feel like this is a great way for them to be able to get like their name out there, their voice out there, whatever the situation. From a content creator perspective, I think it also depends on the influencer. It's not for everybody. So for example, Edgar, he does gossip. So like it kind of makes sense with what he does. Even like for, she's a comedian, like it kind of makes sense with what she does. Versus other influencers, other content creators, like for me specifically, I personally can't do that because my business is kind of rooted on giving information. Like that's what I do. Because I am a blogger. I was a blogger and I'm a content creator, same thing. So my followers come to me for very specific information. They come to me for fashion tips. They come to me for face, makeup, travel tips. So the issue with that is I can't charge that much and just be able to produce to anybody because for instance, if anything were to happen and, for example, I pushed a brand that is not legit, who, either A, they are con artists or scammers, or the product is not up to par, it kind of affects me in a negative way where now people kind of have to question whether or not what it is that I'm saying is legit. So it would affect me negatively. So it's an influencer to influencer situation. It wouldn't work for everybody, but for certain people, it works perfectly.
All right, reputation. Okay, well, thank you, Joy. I'd like to hear from the brand. Would Safaricom, for example, consider? Okay, would you consider even at all, advertising in such a scenario, or what do you make of this? What do you think?
So I think first for me, when I look at it, forget even about Safaricom, but if I look at the model, I actually think he's changing the game and he's being innovative in a space which I think in a very relevant way to him and his audience. Yes, because at the end of the day, when you look at what big brands, one of the let's even take Safaricom. At the end of the day, you can buy airtime for as little as 5 bob. Why? because again, it's about flexibility, understanding what your customer needs and who your target audience needs, and then being able to provide your brand packaged in a way that they can afford and that is relevant to them, right? So in the same way, what he has done is understood first, his gossip, as much as you call it gossip, attracts eyeballs. So he has a certain amount of eyeballs that come every day to his Insta stories page or to his platform. Now, how he's commercializing those eyeballs, because people come in there to listen to gossip, he doesn't make anything, right? Now, what he has found a way is for people to come and actually from those eyeballs, he's able to commercialize that into something that is relevant to his business. So he's paying, and then even there's a little purpose in there where he's saying he's helping small businesses get their names out there. And not to say that I'm a follower of Edgar Obare. However, when you see the responses, there's a lot of feedback that comes through that says, wow, my business has actually been transformed by this. A lot of people, so he is selling a proposition to a certain target audience. So for me, from a model perspective, I actually think it's a game changer, and I think it's amazing what he's doing. But then I love what Joy is saying, is that model is not for everyone. Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's about really, it's not because it's working for Edgar Obare, it's going to work for everyone else. Yeah, he has understood a niche in what he's doing, and he's capitalizing on it. So it's important as an influencer and as a brand. If you look at yourself as a brand, what is it that you're trying to do? Are you selling a premium proposition? If you're selling that proposition, then the way you will execute it is very different from somebody who's doing like a mass market proposition.
All right, let me thank you, Candy. Let me see if I get this right. So Edgar is what now? So the equivalent of a real billboard? You know those street poles, that you have, on the road where there's no context really, so it's just basically display. While someone why Joy Candy would actually really use a product, create some context, tell a brand story, and so on. So is this what we're talking about? So are we saying that it's more of the guys like Magnet and all these guys that should really worry about this? I'd like to hear from Moses as well. I don't know what are your views on this?
I think for me, I like what Edgar's doing, because what he's done is he's kind of unpacking the value proposition into a format and a way that is more accessible to more businesses. He understands that he's not gonna get a Safaricom every day. He's keeping the revenue coming in, and he's also providing sort of an entry-level offering, a different type of advertising unit that can actually accommodate a smaller business. I think also, if you think about the different ways you can monetize your digital platforms as an influencer, there's so many different ways and things you can do. If you're doing a blog or a video like Joy Candy does, she's taking a lot of time and effort to create that content. On the other hand, if you're doing something that is fairly light and easy to do, which is essentially a picture and a bit of copy, and you post it as an Insta story, then that clearly doesn't take as much effort or thought to do, and therefore should command a smaller price. So I think it's brilliant. I think innovation and coming up with new ways of monetization and also allowing you to reach a wider customer base of people is exactly what many influencers will be trying to do, because quite often, an influencer will sit for sometimes months without having a significant engagement. But if they're able to come up with different innovative ways of carrying a brand message, bringing their storytelling in a more affordable way, then I think that's a brilliant way of really them, essentially achieving more monetization and also reaching more markets.
Thank you very much for this, Moses. I was just asking myself, how, let's say on Instagram, you have sponsored posts, right? So you guys don't think that maybe the platforms are going to actually start coming after, these guys, because what they do is, if I'm a brand, I don't have to sponsor anything online anymore. I don't have to buy anything. I just actually go to Edgar, and actually just give him 1,000 and get, some crazy amount of, of exposure. While actually, I don't think Insta stories necessarily, were necessarily created for that. I hear from you that it's really a viable model, and it's actually a great thing, but I'm actually just, let's see how this goes, because, and this is what happens. And especially in Kenya, what happens is one person starts something, everybody wants to do the very same thing, and as you said, it might work well for Edgar, it might not work well for other people, so I'm keen to really see how this thing develops and what it turns into. All right, people, we've actually gone into the end of the second part, of our talk. We're going to go and we're just about to dive into the third part, which is really about framework and the do's, the don'ts, and then some very important topics like bot likes and so on. So there's something that I would like to play for you before we engage Nelson and ask him a specific question about that. After the break, we'll be back.
Want more views?
Buy Instagram views.
It turns out it is way too easy to get them online. A simple Google search shows me tons of sites that can get me instant views for cheap.
All right, so this one has 5 stars. I'm gonna click in here and oh, wow, 10,000 views for 24 bucks, and they take credit card.
Just a few seconds later,
and we've got 63 views.
the numbers keep climbing,
7,731.
skyrocketing well over 10,000.
All right, so we only bought 10,000 views, but the latest number is 16,481. It looks like this video is going viral, but remember, this is all fake.
And Instagram isn't the only one. You can buy friends and followers and views and likes on almost any social media platform out there. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube telling NBC News this type of activity is not allowed, and they're continuing to develop systems to prevent, detect, and remove accounts that violate their policies.
What's the harm in this? Is this fraud?
It's absolutely fraud. And you think about it from the standpoint of just a consumer. You're being misled, so something goes viral, and you go to look at it, but it's not real.
All right, guys, we're back. And now I would like to, so you see how easy it is right now to create, to get likes, to get followers, to buy engagement, So, I mean, I don't know how, what do you call that? I don't know how ethical, this is. So we were talking about rates, and Joy was talking about a potential formula, that allows you to kind of come up with your rates. But now if I'm asking myself, so if the numbers might not necessarily be what they are. So I don't know what that means now when it comes to, the formula, and so on. So what do you guys think of such practices? I'd like to go to Nelson, and then how can one check, to really see, if, the followers that the influencer claim or the engagement that they claim they have, is in essence true? Nelson?
Yeah, that's a really big concern, especially for brands. And that's why one of the reasons that brands are not seeing ROI out of influencer marketing. And I've gotten to a point where I've had people speaking about, especially marketers, brand teams, talking about, influencer marketing is dead now because of such things. We know that influencer marketing is now becoming a really key channel out there, and therefore everyone is trying to build their follower base because, just like Joey put it out there, said that they calculate their rates based on metrics, the number of followers, number of likes, and things like that. So as you've seen, you can easily buy this fake metrics, fake followers, fake likes from what we call like farms. So, and that's very prevalent. And therefore you find marketers paying guys who have hundreds and thousands of followers money for nothing that has been generated out of that. There's no ROI at the end of the day. So that being a key pain point, we have developed as iFluence machine learning models, which have actually been trained to understand what fake following, fake metrics, fake likes look like. And how we did this is by being able to, first of all, delve into the very topic by just creating fake accounts on social media. We bought a lot of fake following from over 50 different like farms all over the world, the ones which are the most popular ones, and generated millions and millions of followers for these fake profiles. And then we set our machines to just learn these characteristics of the computer generated bots. So we're able to see and understand what time of the day do they come in when you buy them, from which particular region in the world, because we're able to geo-target that. We're able to see, test on lexical and non-lexical characteristics to just see how do they really formulate their grammatical sentences when they're commenting on, particular posts. Some will just say, hi, nice post, or hi, follow me and see my post, or something like that. So we're able to know, to the very detail. So we go to very granular levels, and it's in a way such that I can get any profile and I'll be able to tell how much of that audience is real and how much of it is fake. And I'll pinpoint to you where actually they even bought those fake generated bots from. So, I mean, we have to sanitize the industry, to bring the real audience and real ROI to brands.
I love that. We have to sanitize the industry. Let me go to Moses. Moses, what do you think of this? You are a guy that deals a lot with analytics, so and so on. So what do you make of this? This whole practice.
I think first of all, it's extremely shady to go out there and actually, create the illusion of success as an influencer, or by buying likes or buying followers. I mean, because ultimately, what's going to happen is that the majority of those are really just bots and zombies. People who are not even engaged. So, bottom line is, you're going to go out there, you're going to get this initial engagement with a brand or a client. And then you're gonna, put out your content, and then guess what? No one's gonna be engaging. There are no results that are gonna be generated. None of those, followers are actually credible and are gonna do anything for that campaign. Which means ultimately, at the end of the process, the client will simply look at you and any other client thereafter and say, okay, well, from what we can tell, your stuff doesn't work when I'm not coming back. So it's not a long term; it's a short term strategy. I don't think it's sustainable. And then long term wise, everyone's going to know that you don't actually deliver the numbers. So, because at the end of the day, it's predicated on generating value for the brand or the client, right? So if that premise is completely violated, then there's really no future. And I think ultimately, what Nelson's company is doing is fantastic, because they're giving you kind of that early warning system to determine whether or not an influencer is actually credible. And then secondly, if you do have the unfortunate experience of having to work with an influencer who doesn't deliver because all the followers are fake, then you won't go back. So I think there's no sustainability to it. It's not going to work, so that's my opinion. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. I'd like to go and talk to the influencer, Joy. Of course I had to talk to you, so, I mean, you're friends with some of the most influential people, in East Africa and so on, so what do you make of that? What do you make of buying followers, buying engagement and so on?
My issue with that is clients figure it out. Like, they always figure out from the back end, because at the end of the day, you can buy like 100,000 followers. And also the issue is that also when you start buying followers, you're going to have to keep paying to like keep the fakeness going. So once you buy the 100,000 followers, now you got to buy engagement, and you have to continuously buy engagement for every single post. And that's not, like, you're just losing money at the end of the day. But also clients can figure it out from the back end. For example, if you were selling something in Insta stories and you're just like, hey, there's a link up, go check it out. In our insights, when you actually swipe up, you physically can actually see how many people literally clicked the link. And that is hard to buy and to fake. So at the end of the day, it might get you like 1 or 2 jobs, but you're not gonna you're not gonna get continuous jobs, because they'll figure it out at the end of the day that it's not matching up to what they expected.
All right. Right. Thank you for this. I'd like to bring in Caroline Kendi back. Caroline, what do you make of this? We spoke about the fact that a lot of people buy engagement, they buy followers, they buy likes, and so on. What do you make of this practice? Do you think it's sustainable? And as a brand, have you engaged with people that do that? And what do you do, when you're in that scenario? So what are your thoughts?
So I think this is an emerging space, right? And I think even when you talk about the rates, when you talk about how to measure effectiveness, there's a lot of learning as we go along. So when it comes to buying views, or there's some indicators that give you an idea of whether somebody is legit or not, right? One I said earlier is, are you able to get the impact that you want? So if somebody's saying I have, 1,000 followers, and yet after you've spent the money with them, you're not seeing the return, then you're able to see, okay, there might be an issue there with the credibility. But then also, what Nelson said is what is coming now is a lot of technologies and infrastructure that is available that helps us through AI and through the tech that is available to be able to tell whether people actually have those followers, and more importantly, the engagement. So ultimately, the power for me of your strategy or of you as an influencer is the impact that you have on what your clients want. So if Joy Kendi, I have a beauty product and it's new, and I go to her, and because of the way that she activates it, gets people to know about my product, and ultimately I'll see, the numbers will change on my side, then that will be somebody, I won't be following her just because of followers or numbers. It will be also the engagement and what she's doing for me and my brand. So for me, it's a balance. There's a lot of learning as we go along in the process, but I think the thing that is really helping us as marketers and as brand people is the tech, and which is available, that helps us make decisions, because it's all about data-driven decision making, right? So it's about making sure that you have the right data to help you make decisions.
All right. Thank you for that. Wow. So thank you very much, guys. I want to ask you to shift gears a bit and ask you a question that could help us maybe start to think about some possible framework. So I'm asking myself, how does that really work? So how does the influencer get paid? You get a job, you get an LPO. I mean, I've done that before. I know I've paid influencers before, but so let's say, for example, I pay the influencer, let's say 50%. And then I realize that, whatever it is that they were supposed to do hasn't been done, so, so what do I do then? And I know that on a platform, especially if the platform can, for example, pay the influencer, it could be done, progressively, and therefore they get paid for whatever it is that they deliver. I believe, Nelson, you correct me if I'm wrong on what the technology can do. So what do you guys think is the right? I know some influencers that demand 50%, and then they only get the balance of their payment if you're satisfied with the results that they've provided. So I'd like to talk to Joy. So how does it usually work? When you get an engagement.
It's also person to person situation. So of course, number one, you have to get the LPO. I've had situations, and it's kind of like I kind of had to learn by making mistakes, like years ago, where I just you get excited to do a job, but you just start doing it before you even get the LPO, and then things start going off to the left, and you end up not being paid. So biggest thing is that you must have the LPO before you start doing anything. So for me, for example, I don't even start shooting anything until I receive an LPO. Once that happens, you then decide as an influencer if you are the type of person who wants to have 50% down and then 50% at the end. Or, for example, for me, I usually I get the full payment at the end of the month. Also, the reason why that works for me is because I've kind of shifted the way I work, in the sense I don't do short-term engagements anymore. So majority of my jobs are either a month to 6 months to a year. So I don't do one-offs anymore. So because of that, I usually just receive a check at the end of, like, a salary from each company. So it's just a person to person. Like, everybody has their own thing. I personally know some people who have to get 50% down, 50% at the end. So it works for them. It's a security thing for certain people, especially if you're working with newer brands, new agencies that you've never really worked with before. Because as an influencer, a lot of us have been burnt before, a lot. So I get the feeling unsafe. So I must wait to the end.
All right. Thank you very much for this, Joy. You said that you only start working when you get an LPO. Are you sure? So if Kendi actually just calls you now and she tells you we want to start the biggest campaign ever, created, and you're going to make some crazy amount of money, she gives you some crazy number, you're going to tell her, I'm not starting because you haven't given me the LPO, and she tells you we only have...
Okay, also, there's certain brands, like Coca-Cola hits me up, somebody hits me up, there's certain brands that usually it's kind of like you can start early. More in situations where you've never really worked with that agency or that company before, it's just something to just be careful, because we have had situations where you do something and then you've done all the work, but then the LPO never comes back, and now you just have the work and nothing else.
Yeah, I'd like to bring in Kendi.
Yes. Exactly. I feel I need to make a comment there with regards to, for all my procurement people on the line, no PO without any work. So I would even encourage even the big brands, make sure that you get an LPO before you start any work. And I'm a believer in that, because ultimately an LPO is commitment. A lot of times, and I know how big organizations work sometimes, you may actually end up on the short end of the stick if you don't get that commitment. So actually, yes, I would encourage people to say no, because I think also that's part of putting value on your brand. To say, I'm not going to start this work until you give me a formal commitment that you're going to pay me. And that now you start to do things that protect you as a small business in a world where there are many other big businesses. So, sorry, Chris, I interrupted you, but I had to make that point.
No, really good. Actually
also yeah. with what she's saying. So for me, what I always do is, because especially when it's like a bigger brand, like for example, Coca-Cola and things like that, they never just directly hit up an influencer. You have to go to an agency. So the good thing about having the middleman, you can actually be very honest with them. So for me, if an agency hits me up, no matter how big the brand is, I will genuinely ask them, like, did you guys receive an LPO? Like, if you have not, we're still then, like right now, I'm still going to consider it as we're still not sure if we're going to do the project. So you just specifically ask the agency, are we clear? Like, do you guys receive the money? Because at least I know if the agency has the money, nice for them releasing it.
Thank you very much. And Kendi, I want to bring you back. We're actually just really about to start questions now, so we'll engage the others. But Kendi, you spoke about LPO, but we all know, I mean, we've run businesses before. Even once you have the LPO, getting the money, is a whole other story. So most influencers haven't managed to scale up, to become a business. So they can't really wait that long. So how fair is it, currently right now, So what is put in place to really facilitate the process? Because when Joy finishes, completes her task and she's successful, you cannot tell her to wait for 60 days to get paid. I don't know, for me, it kind of doesn't make sense. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, how did I get myself in an LPO conversation? No, I think it's a very interesting challenge. So I believe what happens is, and this is why we work with middlemen, as Joy has said, right? Because at the end of the day, as a big brand, it's very difficult, and a big corporate is difficult to deal with many different. It becomes an administration nightmare. So this is why we partner with agencies and other people in between us who are able to facilitate on our behalf. Now, what happens is part of the terms and conditions with working with a specific agency is we say you need to have a certain amount of cash flow, right? That accommodates, because at the end of the day, we will work with you because of the volume of money or the cash that you get, or the business you'll get. We expect you to do is have a little bit of working capital that is able to sort out smaller businesses like influencers in real time or within a shorter time. So ideally, it shouldn't work in the sense that if me and the third party have 60 days, that 60 days should not be translated to you. But at the end of the day, we don't really have influence. I cannot influence how an agency decides to work with the people. But ideally, part of why we work with specific people and not everyone is because there's a current amount of money that we expect them to be able to facilitate and to help. So they should have a buffer in their financials, so that even if they have to wait 60 days for our payment, they're able to, at least for the smaller payments, facilitate that. Yeah, right, but I mean, it's a challenge in every business, managing working capital because of the amount of money coming in. We are also, and this is what people don't see, but even for big businesses, we also have people we are paying and people who we are receiving money from. So also there's that balance that usually happens that you have to make sure. That's why you have payment terms and things like that.
All right, thank you very much. All right, guys, we've gotten to the last part. We have a lot more questions that we would like to ask the panelists, but this is about you, the audience. So what we're going to do in the next section basically is listen to your questions and ask those questions to the panelists, but we're going to take a short break, and share some videos with you before we actually start, and we're starting right now.
Katika miezi michache iliyopita, nchi yetu imesimama pamoja kuweka nambari za COVID chini. Nambari hizi ni muhimu kwani zitaamua jinsi mambo yataendelea. Hapa Safaricom, nambari zetu pia hupeana hadithi ya tumaini, ukakamavu na upinduzi. Kila siku nambari mpya hutueleza hadithi ile ile kwamba sisi hatukubali mambo tusiyoweza kufanya ije kati ya mambo tunaoweza. Tuendelee kusonga mbele.
Customers today spend less and less time in front of the TV and other traditional media. And every day, people are bombarded by digital advertising. Brands are increasingly finding it difficult to connect with their customer. People with affinity to a brand make the most powerful ambassadors. iFluence is an end-to-end solution to match a brand to the right ambassadors. It enables impactful and authentic connections with the right audience and with measurable results.
We are our own brand ambassadors. We are very keen to connect with people and products that feel authentic to our brand. And it's very important to us that our products represent values and ideas that we truly, truly love, which builds a lot of trust with our customers and leads us to staying true to who we are.
And we are back. All right, guys. Now we're in the Q&A part of this session. Thank you very much, guys, for submitting your questions. We have a couple of questions here, and we're going to try to go as quickly as possible. So, guys, we expect you to answer, but try to go a little bit fast so that we answer as many questions as possible. The first question is, as an upcoming influencer, and it's coming from the audience, right? How do you approach brands? You know, how do you get noticed? You know, that's a very important one. So, Joy Kendi?
Sorry, I can't hear you. It just is a good noise.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, and I can hear you. I think somebody's typing, and I can hear them typing.
Oh, yeah, don't worry. So you can hear me now?
Yeah, and I can hear you.
All right. So as an upcoming influencer, so how do you get noticed? How do you get noticed by brands? So what should you do?
The biggest thing that I usually, that's actually a question that I usually receive a lot. And my biggest thing is just start by creating content. You can't be approached if you don't have any content. They need to see the work that you can actually do and why you're actually worth it. Two, you start growing a following. And the thing is that people always assume that you need to get like hundreds of thousands of followers before you can even start making money. I know people who have like 5,000 followers who actually make a decent amount of money. So to get approached, just create the content, show your work, show what you can actually do. People need to see your quality. They need to see if you would actually be a good pairing with the brand. So that's just my biggest thing. If you're not creating the content, then that's never going to happen. So number one, doing that. And then number two, finding brands that actually work better, or you feel would, that you would love to work with, or you feel resonate most with you. So hitting them up, finding out if they work with agencies, learning about the agencies in Kenya. There's so many agencies and there's so many influencers in Kenya. And then when you are contacting these brands, the person who you want to talk to is the marketing director. They're the people with the money and the people who know what campaigns are going to be happening. And they're the people who would help you. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. So we're going straight into question number 2. At what point would brands start looking at upcoming influencers over, known faces? So I think the brand person could possibly take that. Kendi?
Yeah.
On that?
I think for me it's two things. One is as a new person, what do you have to offer? I always go back to, at the end of the day, you have to be also making sure you have a clear proposition that is different from the existing people in the market. And as a brand, what you'd be looking for is depending on what I'm trying to do. So if I have a new product, a tech product, for example, something which is tech heavy, what I would be looking for is not existing. I mean, the existing people have credibility, but if you package yourself in a way that either communicates what I need in a new way, or to get people to understand what I'm trying to sell as a brand, then I'll probably work with you. But I think it's that, and then also you need to be proactive in understanding how brands work and how the industry works, so you know who who you need to position your brand with. Now, you, the brand, as the influencer. So if, for example, we work with an agency, like if I'm working with someone like Nelson, then you have to know that Safaricom works with Nelson. So if I want Safaricom to use me as an influencer, then I need to understand and understand how they work, and then approach Nelson and say, and understand the brand as well. So understand what is Safaricom trying to do. So right now we're talking about keeping going, inspiring positivity in Kenyans despite COVID. So in that space, what can I do? So if you position yourself in that way and then approach the right people, the likelihood that you will get a chance is higher. Yeah, and then even if you don't have the numbers, it's about how you sell yourself to convince people to give you a chance.
All right, thank you very much for this. The next question: when influencers get too big, they take on so many clients and their posts no longer seem authentic. I think I can relate to this. I've been to some people's timelines and I'm like, paid partnership. So I'm like, but yo, what's going on now? So I don't know. So is there a way to regulate influence so client names are protected and their names are upheld? Wait a second. They take on so many clients and the posts no longer seem authentic. Let's answer the first question first of all. So what do you guys think of that? Viable, good thing to do? How do we solve that? I mean, if you get big, you're going to get more efficient, and then people would want to work with you. So I'd like to hear what Moses has to say about this. Yes, Moses. Sorry, we have muted you.
Sorry, my mic was muted. Sorry. Yeah. So I think there's a bit of a paradox there, because obviously most influencers start off doing what they do almost from a passion point, as a hobby, as something they love, and then without even planning for it, suddenly they find themselves the center of attention, and people came to them. People were drawn to them because of their content, because of this authenticity of what they were saying. And of course, that gets the attention of brands at some point, and brands that, okay, we'd love to get our message into that space. And then what tends to happen is then the influencer then becomes driven not by the passion necessarily, but now by the revenue. And that sometimes has a major effect in terms of the following and the engagement, because obviously the audience can see, or the community can see, that this person is no longer purely posting out of the love, but actually out of the commercial agenda. And that actually then can lead to a decline in terms of how that influencer actually performs. So I do think that the most important thing really is that the influencer needs to always go back to their roots and remember that they got a following and they got a reputation because of what they were doing anyway, with or without the commercial input. And that is a secret sauce to keep people engaged with them. So I always think that an influencer really needs to maintain that balance between the commercial output and the passion output, so that they continue getting the followers and the engagement that brought them there in the first place. And if they lose that, then potentially then they will not have the value proposition that initially got them to where they were.
All right. Joy, would you like to say something quickly about this? Because you've been from being a really nano influencer to what you are today. So what are your thoughts? Really quick thoughts on this. They say that a lot of, so just go ahead, please.
Okay, yeah. So for me, I kind of like the way Moses was saying, it's all about balance. Like my so filled, like to be just overfilled with just advertisements on top of advertisements, which is why I'm also very picky about brands that I work with. Like I have a list, like I do say no to a lot of jobs just because if, like, number one, I don't use you, or I've never used you as a brand, or it just does not work with who I am, I'm not gonna work with you. So I think it's like what you just said, like you need to have balance, and so to help you continue with having credibility, you do need to be willing to say no to certain jobs if you feel like it's not what you resonate most with.
All right. I see from the comments here that people are really asking a couple of questions. Guys, I'm in the audience. We will send you details of all the panelists. Some people are asking, how do you join Affluence? Nelson, AI Fluence. Well done. So people are going to get on the platform now. So there are a couple of things that people are asking. They're looking for your contact details, and we're going to share that. So one unusual question, and which I think is actually quite cool: where and how do podcasts play a role when it comes to influencing? New form of communication, and we know that in the future, is going to happen, and it's going to become a really tricky thing, for influencers, because it's going to become less visual, and so on. So, who would like to take this? Who feels, motivated to actually take this question? Nelson, do you want to take it? Moses?
Yeah, I can do that. So podcasts, actually, if you look in the West, podcasts have actually really have an uptake in terms of influencer marketing, because they have a way of attracting a particular type of audience. There are guys who enjoy podcasts which talk about investment and that kind of thing. There are guys who join podcasts which is all about beauty and wellness, and there are some which are about just advancing in life. So there are different topics. So it's about brands aligning with particular podcasts because they really have an engaged audience. These are captive audience who are actually receptive to what they're listening to. So I think it's a really, really powerful, influencer marketing channel that I would really love to see starting in Kenya, and it's already happening in the West. And if people and brands, if we can, start seeing this kind of trajectory going on in Kenya and even Africa, that will be a really powerful medium.
All right, cool. Thank you very much, Nelson. So the next question: if I use a product and they put it on their feed, does this lower my value as an influencer because they're using me as a marketing tool without paying? Right? I think we're going to put that question as well on the, on screen so that, you guys. So if I use a product or a brand and tag them and they put it on their feed, does this lower my value as an influencer because they are using me as a marketing tool without paying? Trying to really understand. Would you want to take that, Joy?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so number one, you kind of have to think about who is the brand. So for example, if you're an incoming influencer and let's say you have maybe a following of 5,000, and let's say you take a photo of you using makeup and you use MAC Cosmetics, and MAC Cosmetics reposts you on their page. You kind of need to think about who's actually benefiting most in that type of scenario. So for example, MAC Cosmetics has millions and millions and millions of followers. So if anything, you're actually benefiting from their platform versus the other way around. Now, you also need to think about if they are reposting you, are they just reposting just to be like, look, another fan of ours who loves our product, or are they kind of using it almost as a face of the brand, almost as a model? So you kind of need to figure that out. And if you feel, I kind of believe in also listening to your gut. If you feel it's more of they just kind of don't want to be influencers and they just keep reposting things, you can just contact them. And a lot of the times you can ask them, please take down my photo. And a lot of them will actually take it down. But again, you just need to figure out if it's in that type of situation, who's actually benefiting more in that situation versus the other. If you are, for example, being paid by the client and then they repost the work that you have done, a lot of them will that, like that's already part of the contract, saying that if you like any of your content, you can actually repost it on our platform. So in that case, not like you should be.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Moses. I see that you're actually engaging what do you call that? The audience on the platforms. That's really good, really proactive, because we cannot answer all the questions, So, so what should be more important to brands? This is the next question. What should be more important to brands? The quality of work versus the number of followers, and this is number of followers. And can the quality of work outweigh the number of followers? So, and this is, I mean, we're talking about, we have nano influencers that are really great at what it is that they do, for example. So who would like to take that question? Should I give it to Candy?
Yeah. So again, it goes back to what is the objective? What is the objective of what you're trying to do? Because remember when I started, I said, when you're spending money as a brand or as a business, there's a certain return of investment that you're looking for, right? So at the end of the day, it depends. So if it's a a proposition or a product that requires engagement, which is what you're calling quality of work, right? Then it's not about millions of people seeing the product. It's about the people, maybe I already have the awareness, but people don't know how to use my product, for example. Then engagement is going to be the thing that I require from the influencer. And therefore, that's why I would speak to a certain influencer who doesn't necessarily have the numbers, but has a base that is engaged. Versus maybe it's a new product that I want people to know about, then I'll go with an influencer that has the numbers. But I think I've seen another question about return on investment and the whole shift of people moving from digital marketing, like companies like P&G, because of the return on investment. And I think that's a really critical point. At the end of the day, when you think about marketing spend and the spend which is what will be spent on influencers, it's about the return to the business. And ultimately, if you're not able to position yourself as an influencer as part of that process, then it's not a sustainable strategy. So as brand managers, what you need to do is be very clear, how is this influencer driving the return on your business? And therefore, then you can justify spending that money. And as an influencer, how are you positioning yourself as an enabler for the brand because if they do that, if it works, as I said earlier, they will definitely come back to you.
Yeah. Well, awesome. What spaces or platforms do brands look at when selecting an influencer? Guys, I mean, surely we have AI Fluence here. Of course, we're going to say that there's only one platform that you should go to. You know, there are a couple of platforms out there, but as far as we're concerned here today, to be honest, I mean, it's AI Fluence, right? So Nelson is here. What we're going to do is after this, because we have your email addresses, we're going to send all contact details and you know what I mean, and ways to get in touch with the audience. You know, we'll send that all to you, and you know, and we'll see then you'll see what to do. So there's a question that I have, and I think we're getting towards the end of this thing. We only have time for one question now, and it goes back to really choosing an influencer, because you see what happens usually is you look at followers, you look at the presence online, and then you choose an influencer. They have even some sort of engagement, but then you only look at their presence online. You don't look at what they do outside, you know, the browser. You know, I don't know, they get into a fight. They're known for having some serious scandals, you know, all the time. So how, you know, and this is for influencers that are actually watching right now and for brands as well. And then let's say Candy, who's here. How do you guys how should one really choose an influencer? Is the online presence enough? Or should they actually try to look a little bit, have a little bit of a different approach? Do your due diligence? Or what do you say about that? I'd like Moses to actually say a few words on that.
Yeah, I think for sure there's a need for due diligence and research, again, through things like social listening, and it's sort of really measuring and establishing what the right fit would be before you actually go for that specific influencer.
All right. Would someone like to say something else about that? Nelson, for example, because you see, you provide a platform. So I go to your platform, I choose an influencer, fine. You know, they're doing a great job. So what happens now that I will realize that, you know, he's always in clubs or she's always in clubs fighting and causing, you know, some havoc, you know, then the brand looks at you, they ask you, but what's up? You know, so what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, so the beauty about our product is we utilize AI to be able to analyze, you know, influencers to a really granular level. So we'll know exactly what your likes, interests, personalities, values are. We know how much you earn just by through our advanced algorithms. We are able, and one of the things we are really particular about is brand security, especially when you look at influencers. So we use models of AI to be able to scan past all the posts you've ever put online, and even any information about you on Google or any web presence that you have, and be able to see your subjectivity, to see, are you a positive guy normally when you're posting? Are you a negative guy? Are you neutral? Do you have a scandalous, past, which can be of concern? And especially if you've used also, you know, conflicting or maybe competing brands to ensure that, you know, you're not there's no conflict of interest when you're putting it into a brand perspective. So we really do in-depth kind of analysis to be able to ensure that, number one, you have high influence over your audience in terms of emotional connection. Number two, you have a natural brand affinity for the brand that you want to use you for. And number three, your brand security is legit and it's tight. And so that is basically how we're able to analyze.
All right, thank you very much. Guys, unfortunately, we've reached, it's 11:30. We have thousands of questions that are still pending. We've tried to select the questions that we thought, would kind of summarize a lot of the questions that we had. You've heard from the panelists some really, really interesting insights. I've learned some things, and I really hope that this should help you in your influencer marketing journey. So please, there's something that we'd like to share here. This was the first one. So what we're going to do basically is, because there are so many, this is such a broad subject, next week, we're going to have the next version, the next session, which is probably going to tackle influencer management, where we start talking about platforms in detail, probably influencer management, influencer ethics and integrity. Should influencers be blacklisted? Whatever, there are so many things to talk about. We're planning on bringing on board an influencer management agency, some influencers and so on, and we really hope that you've actually managed to get a little bit of value, so what we're going to do as well is, this is recorded, and this is going to be available on YouTube, on Facebook, once we look at it and see if we need to edit and so on. And we're going to try to actually summarize, the findings here as well, and send you an email as well, with what was discussed here. And we sincerely hope that you've managed to get some sort of value from this talk. And thank you very much to all these panelists. I don't know if you would like to say something, a parting shot, or is there something else that you'd like to share? Each of you, starting with, let's say, Joy Candy.
Okay. Thank you guys for coming through. I think I've also learned so much from this entire webinar. This what I can do is, I've also seen there's a ton of questions. So I'm actually in the middle of shooting a vlog right now. So I think I'll go through all the questions and then select a few and keep those in my vlog. So anyone who's here from my side, check it out on the next vlog.
All right. Ladies, Candy?
So no, I think, thank you. I think this is an amazing conversation. I'm also really loving the comments and the engagement happening. It's a really brilliant idea. I think for me, the provocation to all the influencers out there, everyone who's there, is to say, how do you make sure that you're able to commercialize your idea in a sustainable way? Yeah, package yourself in a way that really gets people to pay you for a long time because of the value that you're adding to them. As long as you stay true to that, then ultimately, I think, we're creating an amazing new industry and a new way of marketing that is going to really drive value for both the industry as well as for the individuals. So thank you so much for setting this up, Chris. And yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Candy. Mr. Aseka, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think it's like everyone has said, this was a great initiative. It's about time we had this conversation. And just speaking out there to guys, anyone can be an influencer. Just hone in on what you love doing and keep doing it. You'll eventually be picked. Despite your numbers, you can have 1,000 followers, 500 followers. But as long as you show really high engagement to their following and they identify with you for a particular, skill set, or maybe just hobby, like I love cooking and I know a lot of people follow me for cooking. They actually didn't know that I run a real company. Okay. So everyone, I think, can be an influencer.
All right, thank you very much. And Mr. Digital Guru, Moses Kimibar, what do you think?
Yeah, has been great. One thing I want to just as a parting shot is I've been following the conversation on YouTube and responding to a lot of the people there. I'm seeing a lot of young upcoming influencers asking so many questions about how do they break through and how do they become, one of the ones that is selected by a brand, let's say like Safaricom. And I think for me, because I straddle the world of an agency and I straddle the world of also being an influencer or content creator, I think the secret has always been and will continue to be that good content always rises to the top. And the question I think or the challenge I pose to them is create as much content as you can, good content that doesn't necessarily require you to have money in terms of a client paying you to do it, but really stuff that's coming out of passion and the love of the work. And if you do it hard enough, well enough, long enough, then eventually people will pay attention and you will get the numbers. So I think it's a long game. And I think those who are trying to break through as influencers to be seen and found, just keep plugging away, focus on the passion, focus on the creativity. And in time, you will see that the results will come to you.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. I'm so blessed to actually know all of you guys. It would have been really tricky to actually put, a panel like this together. So to the audience, as I said, next week we have our next episode, which is going to be about influencer management. And what we're going to do in the future is we will try to make this as practical as possible. Meaning, why not then give you some templates? Let's say you want to write a digital strategy. We're going to possibly give you some template that you can use on your own brand. As an influencer, maybe give you some template for reporting, whatever, So, the whole point of this is we want to make sure that the industry really grows. And for this, we have to work together. All right. And until then, I hope you have a nice one. And thank you so much for connecting. All right. Cheers, guys. Bye.
Bye.